I've been,
Let me see what his thoughts are. Okay, we hit a little snag this morning.
Welcome to AT&T teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign. To join the conference as the host, press star. Otherwise, pound. Please enter your host password followed by the pound. There are one participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For many most available commands, press star pound.
So it's gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Jody, whatever her name is,
Oh, yeah.
we never have heard back from her. So, I mean,
A
you
friend of mine
know,
told me she moved from Jekyll. So it was very odd. He just said, hey, would you mind calling her? And then it said she moved. So I don't have to circle back with her.
well, I just figure we've spent enough time on
Oh,
that.
yeah. If you tried, I mean, I didn't mind trying to call her, but.
But it wasn't your place, but we left 2 messages, so.
Yeah, well, you've done everything you can do, so thank you
If she
for doing
wants to,
that.
if she wants to talk to us, then.
That's not
she
been a
knows
big
how
deal.
to find us, yeah.
Yeah, that's not been a big deal.
How are you?
Good.
Well, if y'all aren't wearing them, then I'm not gonna worry about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what y'all's temperature might be this morning. Oh,
I wouldn't think are we gonna have much of a crowd today?
I don't know. They sure do have them close together though out there. I don't know. I don't think so, but you never know.
Joy asked me to present marketing, which is just to introduce, I know, but I didn't know if I needed to let someone know.
I think we put that on his agenda, didn't we?
Yes.
Good morning.
That doesn't mean, he still might not call him Joy, but.
Well, that's what, but if he does, I'll
He
just,
does know that.
if he does, I'll just say, I'll.
It's definitely on the agenda, on his agenda. What was that?
Bob gonna be here today?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Regular talking. I got here early, so I can study, keep set, be prepared. He says, with that speaker right there, it'll get to reading back. It's, you can. took my meat consumption, even chicken, down to that.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. Bill, sir, how are you? Jones, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
Sir Buster.
It was how much?
Well, from my highest weight, 60 pounds. But before I got
So
on
what do we do? What do you do?
stay away from the whites. Just try not to eat. I eat all this fat. I gave Caribbean, all those animals. But I walnuts, drank zero added sugar. No Cokes like that. And it's just a lifestyle change. And you feel better, mind pressure, but walnuts, sardines, calamari, almonds, and then a lot of vegetables at night.
Now, I can handle all that extra.
Well, you can ask Sue Simon or something like that,
I
yeah.
used to think those like cat.
But I can tell you which ones to get and which ones not to get. I'm a sardines connoisseur.
But you don't eat them on soda crackers.
No.
You just eat them plain. I don't know about that now. I'm not good.
You're a man. You are a real man.
Yeah, you're good.
Cambodia?
Moving to the south of the border.
You'll have to get.
How are you? Where are you if I talk to you?
Where you at?
Oh, the craziest neighborhood I think that was ever built. Well, maybe like the third craziest. But Tuscan Landing.
It's beautiful.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like there's only like 4 houses in the whole thing. But it's a bunch of lots in there.
How far is it from here?
25 minutes maybe.
Oh, okay.
Not even that.
Yeah. About the same amount of time it take you to travel from St. Simon's over here.
Yeah. Or it's a little bit faster than where I live now by the airport in Brunswick.
Yeah.
Because there's no stoplights.
Right.
There's one. Yeah, we're supposed to close it in the morning. If you saw me come up in your undercover like, sheets or whatever, you say, oh man, you Jensen in there?
We'll give you those.
Give you the lockout.
Any
Call
way I can help.
Edie at the building inspector's office and say, hey, my son used to work for me.
Ma'am, how are you? Melissa.
Don't worry,
I'll call you back. Everybody's got a
It's a good attorney.
Hey, Melissa, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Great, good to see you.
Plus they're all
How are you doing?
You'll have to find me, I forgot.
I left it at your seat this time. Just as I was passing them out. Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning, Mr. Burke. I'm next to you.
How are you?
I'm good. This stuff's down. Hey, I called Joe just after it. Said the bike paths are wonderful. I know y'all still got some more to do. Good morning. But they are just fantastic. I probably, the last 4 days, I've been at least 10 miles away on the bike paths. Well, that's really good too. I have a tendency to do the South Loop, but part of that is because, you know, it's going to be more accessible that way. No, they're wonderful. They're great.
She's close.
Glad she got it. Yeah, get out.
morning.
Have some leaf skin cancer. All the time, like waxing.
Yeah, they started on me about 6 months ago. So.
You can relate.
Yes, sir.
Good for her. Hello. Called her. Well, when the grandkids were with me, they like that one because you were, since we had, she likes the West River, right? Commissioner Nunn, now, board day, don't put any pay cuts in right.
She's like, we need to pick them up.
I ran into Joe tomorrow, they heard, DCA funding on his, she's got really good. Yeah, it was great, great. Enjoying the wine. There you go. I'll name your tag on. Morning.
How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Good morning, how are you?
I took a little food bar. Hello, man. How are you?
Glad to be in the room. You raised in Georgia?
We have got a lot, I've been right here this for days, and I have reports that
Okay, let's look at that. You're back in the car. Something's wrong with that, you're not taking it. Bob was, I got about 5:30, he said he'd be better than email him. Somebody wants to have a plan.
He got it. Anyway, just FYI. Thank you.
more times than not, I'll go to 16, I'll go to 3, 4, 19. And I'll sometimes just go out each of them. So they're doing some road construction. And my grandchildren live in Concord, so occasionally,
That's a good reason.
there's no reason to go that way.
You know, I was coming down and had a moment in there where y'all wasn't raining. We really haven't wanted to 4 lanes. 10 miles.
and he tried to edit.
See y'all. Morning. Hanging in, Buster.
It's gonna look real professional.
Good morning,
Good morning.
I'll listen tomorrow.
All righty.
I'll be in class.
Okay.
I'll be listening
Okay.
to my phone.
Okay, cool. Okay, that works.
If I have anything else.
You can just message me. Perfect. Thank you. Good. Glad.
During the history
Yeah.
presentation, they got into traffic leaving Savannah, so they're running late.
Okay.
So what I would suggest is that we move this entire committee to right before the full, the committee of the whole. And that way that gives plenty of time for them to get here. And I just talked to Bill and said, I don't think Joe will have a problem with this. And so Bill will be first up with the finance committee.
Yeah.
So that suits you.
Sounds good. Okay.
Almost there. Let's check. And so did we do the phone?
I'm showing 9:30.
Do we have anyone on the line?
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. We're getting ready to start.
Sounds like a commercial, Joe.
I was gonna say. I gotta turn the label to the camera. It's the first thing you're taught at the company.
We're getting ready to start. Hold on one moment.
We'll do it right now. All right, let's go ahead and call the roll. It's 9:30.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger. Mr. Bill Gross.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Here.
Miss Joy Birch Meeks.
Here.
Mr. Trip Tollison.
Here.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard. Mr. Dale Atkins. Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to switch to change up the agenda a bit. Jones, we have a point of personal privilege. You have an introduction to make.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, I'm delighted to introduce to the board members and to the members of the audience the new general manager for the Jekyll Island Club Resort, a Noble House employee for many years now who is being transferred here. I've had the privilege of meeting and sitting down with Douglas Rucker. Douglas, if you'd please stand or wave so people will know who you are. Douglas is coming to us. He has an impressive career in hospitality management. He has been in various locations in Florida. He's been in Hawaii, and then most recently in working the Mission Bay Resort in San Diego. All of those various positions for Noble House, and so we're delighted to have him. Douglas and I spent about an hour, a little over, together talking last Friday. So welcome, and thank you for letting us be in your house this morning as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Welcome. Okay, no public comments were received online for this meeting. I'm going to skip the Historic Preservation and Conservation Committee. There's a traffic issue. So let's see.
Not on Jekyll Island, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Let's see. I will then move to the Finance Committee. Bill Gross. Mr. Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to open up the finance meeting with the August financial statements. Revenues for August were $3,445,662, which is $730,000 more than budget for the month. Year-to-date revenues reflect a favorable $1.4 million variance from budget and a favorable $2.4 million variance from prior year-to-date. The locations with the largest variances from budget were the hotel motel taxes, which were up $226,000. The hotel revenues for July were higher than anticipated. The hotel taxes reported in August are based on hotel revenues from July. Business leases were $131,000 better than. Percentage rent revenues were higher than budgeted due to the increased revenues at the hotels and businesses on the island during the month of July. Summer waves was $68,000 better. Revenues exceeded budget expectations for the month. Daily admission sales were $49,000 better than budget, and locker rentals were $18,000 better than budget for the month. Cabana rentals also continued to produce very good revenues. Convention center was $64,000 better than budget. The convention center held 11 events, the total of 6,064 attendees, which covers 24 event days, and utilized 741,000 square feet of space. Expenses. Expenses for August were $2,113,448, which is $25,000 or 1% less than budget for the month. Year-to-date expenses were $470,000 less than budget and were $778,000 more than prior year-to-date expenses. The largest expense variance for the month were human resources, under budget by $185,000 due to vacant positions, full-time and part-time. Supplies and materials were $44,000 over budget. Repairs and facility grounds, $80,000. Both are higher than budget for the month. These are assumed to be timing-related variances since it's still early in the fiscal year. Net operating cash income for August was $1,332,215, which is $756,000 better than the budgeted net operating income of $576,342. Year-to-date net operating cash income is $1.8 million better than budget and $1.6 million better than prior year-to-date income. The August traffic stats. Total traffic count for August was 125,911 vehicles, which is 13,230 more than August of 2020. Year-to-date traffic count was 1,044,973 vehicles, which is 305,492 more than the prior calendar year-to-date. Hotel stats. Revenues in August of 2021, revenues reported by the hotels were $5.9 million, which is $2.3 million more than August of 2020. Occupancy rate was 67.3, which is up from 58.2. Revenue per available room was $142.58, which is up from $108.11 in August of 2020. Average daily rate was $211.87, which is up from $185.73. Calendar year 2021, year-to-date revenues reported by the hotels is $43.8 million, which is $17.9 million more than year-to-date 2020 revenues. Occupancy rate was 70.3%, which is up from 58.2%. Revenue per available room was $150.40, which is up from $100.86 from year-date 2020. ADR, average daily rate, was $213.83, which is up from $173.38. That's the hotel stats, the financial stats for August.
Mr. Gross, it's interesting if you look at those numbers that you just went through, they are extremely atypical. If you look at for instance, the ADRs and the increases there, obviously driven by extremely high demand during the summer period and during this pandemic period. We're seeing this, as we've been talking about, we're seeing this from our neighbors. And so, you know, how long this is sustainable, no one knows. But I do think that we should be aware that these are atypical numbers, and at least they appear to be.
Well, as we've had discussions about this, you know, with international travel down, I think people are traveling interstate or in our country, staying in our country. And one of the things that's really kind of neat to see is the rooms are being filled with non-convention folks, which is completely different than 2 years ago. So it's the paradigm has shifted, sure.
And your numbers there as far as the convention center, obviously those numbers aren't as great as what we would usually see there.
Right.
But at the same time, those numbers are so much better than we've seen over the past at least 14 months. And I had a conversation with Allison Jackson at the end of last week, and at that time we still had only had 3 convention groups to cancel out. Now, what they're seeing is they're seeing smaller groups, like the group that is at the convention center today and has displaced us, but of course we're glad to be here. But that group ended up being smaller than what had been anticipated by about 200 delegates. So there are definitely shifts taking place, and we just need to continue to monitor the information and see the trends.
Very good. At this time, we'd like Noel to come. He's going to give us or ask for a request for approval of the postage meter lease.
Good morning. Marjorie is at a conference in Savannah, so I'll be pinch hitting for her, so to say. Our current postage meter provider, Pitney Bowes, is one of the companies that is currently under state contract. We'd like to ask to enter a lease for 60 months at $228.19 a month for a new postage meter, which includes the lease of the equipment and the maintenance of the machine. This postage meter was also in the fiscal 22 budget that was approved in June of last fiscal year. The postage meter will have new features and will work with FedEx and UPS. It'll be able to print labels for those 2 shipping providers, and it'll also be able to print return receipts instead of having to wait for mail. We currently have 2 postage machines. One is at guest information. One will be eliminated, so we'll just be down to 1 postage machine. And we're able to do that because now that the annual passes are being able to renew online, and there's not a lot of mail going in and out, and marketing spending more on messaging via email than in the past. So staff is requesting board approval for the proposed postage meter lease with Pitney Bowes under a state contract for $228.19 per month as summarized.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of proposed postage meter lease with the Pitney Bowes as recommended by staff? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Thank you. Motion carries. Now, Noel, if you would, the request for the approval of the operating equipment leases.
As I split this up in 3 different sections, Mr. Gross, for vote. We currently have a golf course maintenance agreement with John Deere through Wells Fargo Finance, and that is expiring, and you approved that 4 years ago, and what we're asking to do is to continue with the lease of equipment, and they're replacing the equipment with brand new equipment, so it's not 4-year-old equipment. And they're also giving us 2 new pieces of equipment, some greens rollers to be able to use on the greens to help green speed. So this lease agreement will replace and update the previous lease agreement from 4 years ago. And staff is requesting the golf course maintenance equipment lease with Wells Fargo be considered for a total monthly payment of $5,154.10, with the first payment being due October 1st of 2021. and this money was included in the fiscal 22 budget that was approved in June.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of the golf course maintenance equipment lease with Wells Fargo as recommended by staff?
So moved.
So moved and a second. Any discussion? I'd like to point out that when Noel evaluated this golf course equipment cost 4 years ago, there was substantial cost savings in doing this lease. So he's done a phenomenal job, or their team has, as far as evaluating, trying to keep the equipment up to par without having tremendous maintenance costs. So this is just a continuation of that. So good job, Noel, on that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gross, before you vote, I also should mention for board members that that all of these equipment leases, or all of the leases, obviously require approval from the state, and the approval has already been granted if in fact you approve it. So the state has blessed these actions if in fact the board takes them. But we can't enter into a lease without state approval.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Like sign. Motion carries. Now the landscape equipment lease, Noel?
Yes, sir. Similar to the golf course equipment lease, we decided to replicate the same program with landscape. Their landscaping equipment was getting worn out just like the golf course was 4 years ago. And we have realized that the equipment stays in better shape. There's a maintenance person at Sea Island that can work on it. And most of the stuff is covered under warranty, so it's almost like you have a new piece of equipment every time you get on it, with the exception of just regular maintenance of changing oil and things of that nature. So we decided to replicate that with the landscape department to a degree. And JIA would like to enter into a new landscape equipment lease with Wells Fargo. This lease will be needed to be updated every 4 years, similar to the golf course maintenance lease, with this year being the very first cycle. The lease accounts for 14 pieces of equipment ranging from mowers to a small tractor with a bucket attachment, of which landscaping doesn't have. This money was included in the fiscal 22 budget, and staff recommends approval of this landscape equipment lease with Wells Fargo for a total monthly payment of $3,660.57 per month, with the first payment being due on October 15th of 2021.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of the landscape equipment lease with Wells Fargo as recommended by staff?
So moved.
You have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, no, I think, last thing, the roads and grounds equipment lease.
This lease is a little bit different than the prior. In order to update the roads and grounds equipment, JIA would like to enter into a new equipment lease with Caterpillar Financial Services through Yancey, who's the local state contract for Caterpillar equipment. This lease accounts for one Caterpillar 320 excavator. The first year lease payments were included in the fiscal 22 budget, which was approved by the board in June. This piece of equipment will help us be able to bridge the gap between a mini excavator and a backhoe that we currently have, and we have not received backhoe yet, so really we're running around with a mini excavator trying to do larger projects that need a bigger piece of equipment. And as you remember, this piece of equipment is the same piece of equipment that was vital in recovery from Hurricanes Irma and Matthew. Without that piece of equipment, we wouldn't have gotten back up and running as fast as what we did to be able to move trees and debris in the manner in which we did. There's other reasons to have this piece of equipment. Almost every municipality has this type of equipment, although it may be a different brand. But this was a huge hole in our program, and as far as public works and roads and ground maintenance, and to be shared by several departments, including water, wastewater, landscape, roads and grounds, and other needs. And it's really beneficial to Jekyll Island. Staff hereby request approval of the governmental equipment lease purchase agreement with Caterpillar Financial Services via the state contract. The total payment will be $261,500 $916.36 payable over 7 years. And then at the end of that 7-year term, the excavator can be purchased in the amount of $1, which we feel is a pretty good deal because the life expectancy of this thing is well over 15 years. So we'll maintain it properly, and we'll definitely get our money's worth out of it.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of the roads and grounds equipment lease purchase agreement with Caterpillar Financial Services as recommended by staff?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No, does it have a thumb on it?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, I don't think there's any opposed. Sorry about that. Motion carries unanimously. Noel, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Finance Committee agenda.
Thank you. We'll now open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. You'll come up here, state your name and where you live. Okay, move on. Do you want to go to the Human Resources?
Yes, sir.
We'll go to the Human Resources Committee, Dr. Buster Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one of those bittersweet moments today as we honor and recognize one of our retirees, and to help us do so, we're going to call on Jamie Clayton from our Human Resources Department to come forward and make some comments, and then following that, we'd like to get a picture, please.
Good morning, everyone. We have a retirement presentation this morning. Miss Phyllis Gaska is retiring after 16 years of full-time service to the Jekyll Island Authority. I'd like to invite Andrea Marquand to say a few words.
Thank you. I'd just like to take a few moments to recognize Phyllis for her many contributions here on Jekyll Island. Serving for many years as a certified interpretive guide for the museum, she's been a wonderful ambassador, sharing her love of the island and its history with others. She is absolutely passionate about her work and about this community. She is always the first to volunteer for additional duties, and she consistently goes above and beyond to help her coworkers and to provide memorable experiences for our guests. Here's just a few examples of Phyllis at work. You may remember her dressed in full period attire, portraying historical characters such as Elmira Rockefeller and Alva Vanderbilt to bring history to life. Do you enjoy shrimp and grits? Because Phyllis absolutely has bragging rights that she has worked each Shrimp and Grits Festival each year since its inception when it's been running. And how about, do you enjoy Christmas in the Historic District? Phyllis has personally handcrafted hundreds of Christmas bows each year in order to make sure that Christmas in the Historic District stays merry and bright. How about are you familiar with the annual chili cookout at the fire department? Phyllis has been absolutely instrumental in making that event a big success and generating a whole lot of support for United Way here on Jekyll Island. And these are just a few examples of ways that Phyllis has made a very real difference here on Jekyll. I want her to know that we remember and we appreciate her efforts, and I wish her many congratulations on her retirement. Phyllis?
Mr. Chairman, while Phyllis is coming forward, if I could take a point of privilege here to absolutely affirm everything that has been said thus far. Phyllis is filled with creativity and enthusiasm, and there's no one else who can fill those shoes quite like Phyllis can. She's been in the right place at the right time, and she has helped make Jekyll Island a better place and a place that has been enjoyable, and she's brought history to life for so many folks. She also is dedicated to the staff. She's a tremendous cook, and she has baked so many goodies and cakes to honor various staff members until you can't even count them all. And Phyllis is just known throughout the Authority as a friend to everyone. She's my friend. I'm really hating to see her go, but we're excited for her too, because this is going to be something very special for Phyllis and her husband as they look at what's next. I would like to say too, for some of you that have military backgrounds, Phyllis has a military background, and I think that's come in handy at times, because when you have to herd a bunch of visitors and get them on a trim and keep them on time, that can be kind of difficult, and Phyllis can make that happen and still smile, and then the reviews that she would receive were always outstanding. So Phyllis, we're going to hate to see you go, but you're not going to be a stranger. You've promised, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Chairman and Dr. Evans, would you come and join us to take a picture?
Again, we want to thank Phyllis for her service to the Jekyll Island Authority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Human Resources Committee.
Thank you so much, Sheriff Dr. Evans. All right, are we ready for
Questions or comments?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Any questions or comments from the floor? All righty. And we had some traffic come up in Savannah.
Let's move to the marketing committee.
I was going to say that makes sense. Joy Birch Meeks has requested that Glenn Willard open and present the marketing committee today.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome Alexa Hawkins up front, and Director of Marketing, and to provide an update of some opportunities for what's going on in our marketing department.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Glenn. So I wanted to quickly just give an update on some items that are in progress, some things that are on the horizon that we're currently working on. One of which is a new event. This is coming to the Holly Jolly Jekyll season of events, and it is sort of a sister event to the popular Turtle Crawl. So on November 27th, we will be rolling out the Cold Stun Plunge. So if you're familiar with the popular polar plunges that happen in the north, this is something we're going to be doing here on Jekyll Island in the Atlantic. And this event is supporting the Georgia Sea Turtle Center on behalf of the Jekyll Island Foundation. We decided to roll this out because in the winter months we do see an influx of our sea turtle patients to the center, many of which are being rehabilitated due to cold stunning, which is sort of a form of hypothermia. And a lot of that happens in the winter months because of the cold water temperatures that drop rapidly up north. So we see a lot of those patients coming here, and it's a great time to really support the mission of the center and the work that they do to help release those patients back into the ocean. So on this day, we will be asking people to come out and take the plunge. They'll receive a commemorative t-shirt. There'll be photo ops with Scoot, the Sea Turtle Center mascot, and his friends, and it's just another great way to support the center. You do not have to be a runner or a racer for this event, so it's a great family activity. It'll take place on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, so it's a good opportunity to maybe burn off some of those Thanksgiving calories.
Alexa, did you say that all board members are expected to participate?
Yes, you are actually. That was already assumed. We have your t-shirts already on pre-order. So, in addition to that, I know this year we will not be holding our annual Shrimp and Grits Festival, but we are excited and are already working and planning on next year's event, which will be the 15th anniversary. It'll be held November 4th through the 6th, 2022. But so that we can kind of get the momentum going, this year in November, that first weekend when Shrimp and Grits would have been held, we are going to be rolling out some other activities to really prep people to save the date for next year. We will be returning with the Go for the Grits 5K race. It will be held beachside this year. It's presented by the Beach Village Merchants. And it's in partnership with one of our race partners, Quinton, our running company, which they do a fantastic job. So we're excited to return that this year. We'll also be having an online cooking demonstration from last year's Georgia's Best cooking competition winner, which was Honey Cafe. So we're working with them, and we'll be able to highlight their recipe from last year, so something you can cook at home. And then we'll be rolling out an anniversary sweepstakes. So an opportunity for people to come and have a trip to Jekyll Island and attend the 15th anniversary of the Shrimp and Grits Festival. We will roll out the 2022 poster art, so we'll be revealing that as well, which is exciting because that's always a very popular merchandise item, and so we'll have a merchandise available to accompany that, and that will also be available. So keep an eye out for that the first weekend in November, and that will sort of be our save the date to start marking your calendars and planning for next year. And then lastly, 3181, the magazine of Jekyll Island. So you're all familiar with this. It's something that the marketing team really puts their heart and soul into. I would say it's one of our passion projects. So we are excited to be working again on this magazine. In 2020, we had to do a little bit of a pause just due to costs to produce this with, in light of the pandemic, but we're excited to be able to roll out the fall/winter 2021 issue. This is actually a sneak peek of the cover and of one of the stories called A Southern Rock Story, and it's actually highlighting some of the Southern rock bands that have been to and performed on Jekyll Island, including the Allman Brothers, before they were famously known as the Allman Brothers. So this will be hitting mailboxes in late November. We're actively working on getting the final product together and to our printer. Of course, print right now is difficult because of paper shortages, and so we're hoping that we don't hit any snags with that, but we are actively working on getting it out by late November. In addition to that, I did want to mention that in July, we sort of on a whim entered the Spring/Summer 2020 issue into Folio Magazine, Folio Publishing's Eddie and Ozzie Awards. And so they're sort of a top tier publisher and very well known in the industry for print publications. And so we have not entered this magazine historically into this, but we thought we would give it a shot, and we were very excited to find out that we are a finalist in 2 categories, both for editorial and for art direction, and this is a national award. So we will find out in October if the publication actually won in those categories, but it's exciting nonetheless to see that we were a finalist. There are a lot of national publications like Southern Living and National Geographic that are also included in that, so it's exciting for a small publication for Jekyll Island to be included. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that, and keep an eye out in your mailboxes for the next issue.
Alexa, did I hear you say in a meeting the other day that we now have more than 10,000 subscribers?
We do, actually. We don't actively, so just to take a quick step back, so this publication, the idea of it, the goal of it was really to help build brand awareness for Jekyll Island. So we've always been very targeted in who we're reaching and where this publication is going. It's in partnership with Atlanta Magazine, so it's actually included polybagged with Atlanta Magazine on several issues, and it goes out to new distribution list every time that Atlanta Magazine pulls. So these are people who maybe never have any familiarity with Jekyll Island. They might have heard of it or they might have never heard of it, but aren't actively, considering it. So this is to drive that interest, to drive that consideration. However, when we first rolled the magazine out, we did have a lot of people who expressed interest in wanting to continue to read the publication, so we did set up a subscriber list. However, we don't promote that subscriber list aside from the landing page that this issue is available to on our website. But we did pull that list recently, and it's at almost 10,000. So without actively promoting it, we have a lot of people who want to continue to receive the publication, which is, very exciting and a testament, I think, to the work that is put in both between our marketing team, our creative director. She does a fantastic job laying this out. She does all of the art direction for it. And our digital content manager, Brian, shoots all the photography. It's almost 99% shot here on the island. The only reason we use stock photography is because it's sometimes hard to photograph a moving butterfly. But other than that, we work really hard to produce it, and it is considered, what we think a coffee table book. So,
Great.
Any questions? I'll turn it back to you, Glenn.
Thank you so much.
I would like
Let the
to-
record show I'm an honorary member of the TAMS.
Of the TAMS.
Very proud of it.
You may have to sing, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I tell you what, they prefer that I just
Dance.
stand and sway and drink a beer or two, but I'm very proud of the TAMS. Be young, be foolish, and be happy.
I'd just like to applaud Alexa and your team. I mean, the pieces that you produce are very professional. I think it represents Jekyll well. I've not seen anything that I wouldn't be proud of when I see some of the pieces and things that you're doing. So with a small group, you're doing I think an excellent job. So it's exciting to see these things.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Is that it, Glenn?
Yes, sir. That concludes
Okay.
marketing. I'm sorry.
Well, then we'll open the floor for any public comments. All righty. We will move on.
Just we'll go on to the committee of the whole, Mr. Chairman. They're not here yet.
Oh, they're still not? Okay. Well, then,
Trip is on the phone, so you may want to legislate.
yeah, Tripp, I'm showing no legislative report. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go on to the committee of the whole. And the proposal for the 2021 master plan update. Lee?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm glad to be here today to present the final draft of the 2021 Jekyll Island Master Plan update. What I want to do is pretty much just walk you through kind of the structure and the content of the plan. Then I'm going to provide some updates and more specific details on why we made some mapping updates, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So we start with an introduction to the plan, obviously, and what I want you to see here is that this plan is intended to provide guidance for the next 5 years, and the implementation of the plan will be found in the work plans and operational plans of the authority. And so where the 2014 plan gave a lot of detailed kind of work plan items, we decided to stay at that higher master planning level this year, but the implementation is part of the authority's responsibility, obviously. We also included within the plan the mission, vision, and values of the authority. I think it's always important to reiterate those. We know the important work that is done. We know that the authority are stewards of Jekyll Island, of the past, present, and future, and seek to maintain that balance between nature and people. The process that we used, we had a lot of involvement in this plan in several different ways to inform it. We had 5 members of the JIA staff that were kind of an advisory group. And then whenever I needed information or data or something, staff folks were always happy to provide what I was asking for. And so we had about 20 people in various roles that provided us information. I interviewed 7 of you as the board. We had a stakeholder group of 13 invited members. We met with them twice. We had an external review committee that we met with, walked through the plan, and they provided input. We had a town hall meeting. We did an electronic town hall, as you may recall, that had real-time feedback from folks. They entered comments into a laptop based on questions, and then that was immediately displayed, and we got any clarifications, and so we had that input. We had almost 11,500 surveys, either started or completed. And then we had a team at the Vincent Institute of 14 faculty and staff members that played some role in developing this plan. One of the things I always like to hit on are accomplishments between plans, and so much has been done. And so we're going to really show this within the plan graphically. We didn't want to write up a bunch of things when we can see the pictures. We can see what's happened and see what's changed and see what's been added and improved. And then I think that the other things that have been really critical that the authority has done are things like the conservation plan and the 2016 transportation study and the carrying capacity and infrastructure assessment that have really informed the work that they do. And those are all parts of accomplishments since the last one. We have a section about conservation and development, and this section really is kind of a timeline of the authority itself and land use allocation. It highlights, or talked about of the 2014 plan and how it came about to use acreage as what's developed and undeveloped. And then it focuses on some of the things that are said in the carrying capacity and infrastructure assessment. And this I pulled out to highlight today. The JIA should continue to carefully prioritize existing capital improvement projects and be cautious when considering any new development. Careful consideration should be given to how and when the remaining acreage is used. Similarly, the JIA will have to determine how to best manage the number of visitors to ensure that the character of the island and visitor experience are not negatively impacted. We've seen tremendous growth in numbers of visitors to Jekyll. And at some point you get to that capacity where other people's experiences and their own experience begins to be diminished. How will that be addressed as time moves forward? The next section of the plan uses the same 5 subject areas as the 2014 plan. We felt it was well divided and provided a good organizational structure for the plan. And as I said, this plan really stays at the higher level and leaves those actions for implementing the recommendations to the authority and to the board. So the first section is economic sustainability, and how we built this plan was a series of findings and a series of recommendations. These are the categories of findings, and each of these findings in the plan has one or more recommendations, and I'll give you some examples. Dynamic pricing. It may be a tool to limit overall numbers. It may come a time where adjustments have to be made where you say, this is kind of our capacity. The convention center as a key economic driver. The ability to have users of that facility take advantage of all the services that are provided by the convention center. We heard from a lot of folks that more dining options across the board, from the surveys to the stakeholders to everybody we heard from, to the town hall. People want either more options, they want more later hours, and while these things are truly a function of the private sector, those are privately operated, though they're leased, what do they need to know and hear on how they may run? When it comes to events, how many attendees is too many, right? Again, we get to that capacity, we get to the idea that diminishing experiences is possible. So how do we address that? And then the Jekyll Island campground continues to be very popular, continues to have very high occupancy rates, and expanding that to that 12 acres, that full 12 acres, and finishing out that project is important to do. Historic and cultural resources. One of the things that we also do in each section, and I should have said this, is we're going to be including some data. It's the things that you hear every month, the updates that you get. How can we look at that over time since the 2014 plan? And those are things that we didn't put in at this time because then we move towards layout of the document and things get moved around and shifted, so it's easier to talk about what we're going to be including. In historic and cultural resources, we'll be doing things like tour numbers, visitor counts, museum revenues, ADA facility enhancements, things like that. Some of the important things in this section that come along with these findings and recommendations is maintaining historic structures and managing cultural resources, expanding how programming is done, adding things like wine walks or gallery talks and lectures, and maybe more hands-on activities to engage a broader range of age groups. Seeking a private partner to lease, redevelop, promote, and operate the amphitheater. We heard from a lot of folks the amphitheater, and bringing that back is a high priority. And so moving towards that, but recognizing that a private partner is more suited to do that than the authority. Ensuring that significant historic and cultural resources are preserved and protected from extreme weather and sea level rise is going to be a priority. And then ensuring the map that's over here is consistent with the conservation plan. And in this case, as far as historic and cultural resources goes, it looks at reclassifying the Confederate battery. It's currently classified as developed, and changing that to undeveloped. And the Confederate battery is near the airport. It's within the fenced property of the airport. There's several acres that are part of that project, or part of that piece of property that should be reclassified. And we'll look at that more closely in just a minute. For natural resources, our findings, we have a number of areas. Again, consistent maps is important. And I'll highlight the 3 very specific properties that we're looking at to make the maps consistent with the conservation plan. The first is a borrow pit wetland in the interior of the island that's now surrounded by natural areas. It's about 6.96 acres of property. It's currently defined as developed, and our updated map reclassifies that as undeveloped. A portion of the Clam Creek Peninsula, it's 4.71 acres. It's a relatively undisturbed patch of maritime oak forest adjacent to the road, and that's included some small wetlands, and it was really misidentified in the 2014 plan as developed and should therefore be reclassified as undeveloped. And then finally, the largest piece of property here is the Beach Prairie. It's 8.54 acres, and as the conservation plan says, and we reiterate here in the master plan, this landscape provides a rare experience of unobstructed ocean views along the beachfront. And so reclassifying this will bring the conservation plan's CPA map, the conservation priority areas map, and the master plan's developed lands map into agreement. And we think that that's an important thing to do. Other areas within natural resources, things like sea level rise. We want to make sure that and look at adopting NOAA's intermediate high sea level rise scenario for community planning, and as well utilizing the model language in the Coastal Resources Division, enhancing coastal resiliency with green infrastructure. There's also that with shoreline protection and resiliency, the Jekyll Island Authority has been working in partnership with some other local municipalities, and to continue that work on identifying lands that are vulnerable to erosion, flooding, or both, and not just from sea level rise, but from storms, and work to prevent, minimize, and remediate where those problems are occurring. There are also areas like focus on areas that support increased institutional sustainability, another priority within the conservation plan, things like energy responsibility, waste reduction, and water conservation. And then pursuing funding to provide space for treatment, rehabilitation, and research at the Sea Turtle Center, and to engage visitors with enhanced experiences. And finally, with educational programming, embracing those opportunities for teaching and learning of visitors of all ages. Within the recreation findings, we have 4 areas that we focused on. The first is the golf course master plan. The golf course master plan as it exists has not been adopted, but the board is going to have to decide how to invest in Jekyll Island's golf club going forward. Since fiscal year 2015, the authority has subsidized golf course operations with nearly $4.3 million, and it isn't sustainable going forward. I'm going to hurry up. I'm getting my 5 minutes, and I want to get to the map.
No, you have 10.
There's some other areas, things like mini golf, that's really popular with visitors. They'd like to see it as an evening activity. It's closed after dinner, and there are not a lot of options for family activities at night, and so how can that be changed? Resurfacing and rejuvenating bike paths on the north end and completing the South Loop are high priorities, as well as looking to extend the bike path specifically out to the Welcome Center and then out to 17. And then there's a desire for some additional recreational opportunities. These need to be self-sustaining financially, and pickleball and croquet are the ones that we're recommending pursuing right away. Transportation infrastructure, municipal services, really quickly, the gate entry has increased by nearly 180,000 vehicles year to date since the 2016 transportation study was done. It may be time to look again if some sort of intra-island shuttle is needed. There's untapped potential at the airport and how additional facilities there could be used by small corporate fly-ins or meetings there. Continue to pursue the recommendations for water infrastructure within the carrying capacity and infrastructure assessment plan. Make sure pedestrian infrastructure is meeting the needs of pedestrians, and then continue to explore opportunities for an urgent care facility. There's space for that. That was specifically constructed for that at the Beach Village, and so how does that get to happen? So in the mapping section, there's 6 categories of correction that resulted in a proposed change of current developed acres to 1,599 acres, a reduction of 15.8 acres, and with that, a voluntary reduction in the overall acreage available for development to 1,659.4 acres, down from 1,675 acres that were identified in the 2014 plan. And I'm going to give you more detail on that in just a second. There are going to be 2 appendices to this project, but right now we have 3 because in Appendix A, we currently have some examples of the data and information that will be used in graphics and in sidebar in the final plan. Appendix B, as it exists right now, are the public comments from the town hall meeting, and that's the actual kind of transcript from that. We corrected no spelling, we did no editing on that. And then in Appendix C, we have the master plan survey results, which includes all of the comments. The only editing we did in that is we redacted emails and phone numbers because we didn't think it would be fair to publish those online when folks may not have been aware that they were going to be published. So that's the document as a whole. Let me walk through the mapping updates with you. There, as I said, are 6 categories of correction. There were projection errors. We now have better imagery and underlying shapefiles. We've established road and bike path and service road standard widths. We've aligned things with lease lines. We've corrected just some obvious errors, and then I've already addressed the conservation plan consistency. Just to give you an idea of what these look like, GIS maps are created by putting layers together. You have a satellite image and you have shapefiles, and sometimes they don't align properly. So you can see a road, and then you can see nothing's over it, right? So there should be something over that to indicate that that's a road, but it's not there. So that's just a projection error. And I will say that some of this, the mapping in 2014 was based on 1996 data and information, some of it hand-drawn. So this is one of the reasons we have much better information now. Here you can see there's a plane sitting there, so that's clearly part of the airport and developed, and our better imagery and shapefiles have given us the ability to line that up better. One of the things that had not been done before is there were no standardized travelways, and so now we've standardized all the road widths, bike path widths, and service road widths, where roadways have a 40-foot travelway, bike paths have a 14-foot, and service roads have an 18-foot, and all of that is on center, so that any roadway from, if you're standing on the center line, 20 feet in either direction is considered developed, and so that's where, and you can see here that some of those lines are a little wavy, but we've corrected that. Lease lines, some of the shapefiles just missed. You can see here the yellow outline. It should all be filled with pink, and if it's outside of that yellow line, it should not be pink. So we've corrected where we just missed, and we've made sure those alignments are done properly. And then there were some places that were just obvious errors. For example, in the 2014 map, it counted a patch of tidal oysters as developed land. That is not developed land. And then there were things like these service roads that actually do not exist. And so we have corrected those. I know that Yank and Ben spent some time in the field trying to find these roads, and they were not there. And so we have corrected that from them being counted as developed. And the last one I'll mention is the consistency with the conservation plan. I gave you 4 specific examples of where we've looked to correct that so that areas that are priorities for the conservation plan should also be undeveloped parts of the landscape. And I'll show you here the maps. We also have them up on display here. The areas that you can see through on this image that show up as pink were considered developed in the 2014 master plan and are no longer considered developed in the 2021 master plan update. You can see specifically the area along Clam Creek, the Borrow Pit, some of the beach prairie, and some other areas. The blue areas are what is the layer that's considered developed. I'm going to show you that kind of in reverse. So now you can see where you have blue showing through here. These are areas that are added as developed landscape because they were corrections. Things like road widths or aligning lease lots, or the parking lot at St. Andrews was marked as undeveloped, and so we corrected those. And so all in all, again, it adjusts to a reduction in overall developed acreage that will occur on Jekyll Island as a whole, from that 1675 down 15.4 acres. And so I think it's an important change. It's important to make these corrections when we realize them, and I think it's important to align them particularly with the conservation plan. And that is the update.
Lee, can you address the fact that these changes, and it's important for the board as well as anyone listening to know that these changes were, as you've said, the technology has changed and that sort of thing, and this was not, the 2014 plan was developed by the Carl Vinson Institute and with input from our conservation department, just like this one.
That's right.
But the sophistication and the review is why these changes are being proposed. Can you also talk to the fact, though, that even though the actual acreage for develop is being diminished, would be diminished in this plan, that the acreage for like the 12 acres for the expansion of the campground, that all remains the same under this proposal?
That's right. So the acreage left available, the number of acres that can still be developed remains the same. That remains at 60.39, if you go out a couple of decimal points. It remains the same, with approximately 40.39 acres available for public health, public safety, and public recreation, and 20 acres available for unrestricted use, which can include carefully considered commercial or residential development. What this does is, because some of the areas that are high priority conservation areas that had been classified as developed are being reclassified as undeveloped. Some things like road widths, where it may have been random, 60 feet, then 20 feet, then 40 feet, they've been standardized. That changes some of the numbers. So the correction overall reduces that cap, that top acreage for development, by 15.8 acres, and means that we're proposing within this master plan update that total acreage for development be reduced from 1675 to 1659.4 acres as part of this update.
So the thought here, the philosophy and the effort here is to retain the approval that was given in the 2014 plan by the state legislative process, but to correct the inconsistencies that have been discovered and determined as we then put this forward to or recommend that it be put forward for legislative review. I mean, is that a fair statement?
That's correct, and most of it is based on better information. We have better imagery. We're able to see things better, and then the idea of things like standardizing the road width, or saying, hey, in the conservation plan, we looked at these areas as high priority areas. Why do we have them as developed? They should not be developed. And so those changes, when you kind of add them all together, you have some areas, again, that you can see. Let's see if I can make this go backwards. Yes. So you can see some areas that show up blue on the 2014, that those are added as developed acreage. Things like the parking lot at St. Andrews, which were there, but were just not done correctly. But you also have things like the tidal oysters, which were marked as developed and come out, and the alignment with lease lines. So the 6 areas of correction that both UGA, GIS folks, and worked with JIA to say, hey, here are the areas we need to look at. We thought it was significant, and we thought it was important to make the corrections when you have better information. And so that's what this map update looks to do.
I may have misspoken. I saw the attorney about have a heart attack over there when I said something about process. I know I'm not supposed to talk process. You're supposed to talk process.
We can go through it.
Okay. I want to go back one minute though, because I think it's very important for board members to grasp what is being proposed here. And obviously you've all received this entire draft in your advanced packets. I suppose, you know, when I think of Clam Creek and I think of the changes and the trails or the roads that really weren't there that showed up as being there and things like that, those are obvious. I want to be sure that you understand when Lee references the coastal prairie. I want you to think about where that is because that is probably the most prominent of all of this. If you go to, in your mind, to the Club Hotel Pavilion over on the ocean side, and you look between there and Tortuga Jacks, but then primarily heading northward to the Ocean View Beach Park, that is the ocean prairie, okay? That's the coastal prairie there. And that area in the conservation plan that you approved at the end of last year, those areas become extremely protected conservation areas. And so if that's the case, then it's only appropriate for consistency that they be appropriately categorized in this document as undeveloped, because how can you have a conservation protection area and have it then in another study categorized as developed? So am I explaining, Ben, have I explained that correctly? Okay. Lee? I
Yes.
just want to be sure, and to me, that is the most prominent example, and it's the largest example of the acreage that's being discussed here. But I think that it's important, and if there's one thing that, and staff highly recommends that you make this change for consistency, and I think if there's one thing that over the years that we constantly hear about Jekyll, it's that when you come to Jekyll Island, there's nowhere else that you can drive along that close to the Atlantic Ocean on an island like this that actually has development and see unobstructed views of the ocean. And so that's a huge attraction and a huge branding point for Jekyll Island. So I just felt the need for us to talk about that. We'll be glad to answer any questions you may have or comments about that. Melissa?
Board members, I don't think I'm on. Now I'm on? Oh. Press a button. Board members, you just were presented with the final draft of the master plan. Georgia law requires that any proposed amendment to the master plan be described in written form and presented publicly at a regular meeting of the authority, and that is what happened here today. As required, this will be advertised in the Glenn County and Fulton County papers of record. It will be posted online and with the ability for the public to submit comments online. There will also be a public hearing held on October 14th at 5:30 p.m. at the Convention Center. Georgia law also requires that we send a notice of the proposed amendment to the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, the Jekyll Island State Park Authority Oversight Committee, and the Office of Legislative Counsel. If no objection is received from the Oversight Committee, this will be back before you for a vote at the December board meeting on whether to amend the master plan. So today you're not adopting the amendment to the master plan. And what we're asking you to do is to authorize sending the proposed amendment
up to the state entities as the next step in adopting the master plan. The legislature does not have to take any positive action on this. Those state entities that I just discussed can review it and do nothing. If they do nothing, if we don't hear anything, then we can take a board vote on it in December. If they do object to it, then there is a process after that. So today before you staff is requesting that you authorize transmittal of the proposed master amendment to the entities I spoke about before. And again, this action, we're not approving the master plan amendment.
So we need a motion.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to authorize the executive director to send the proposed master plan to Georgia state officials as recommended by staff? I need a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All right. I'm going to call for the vote, and let's do roll call on this.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, you're fine.
surprised you. I want to do roll call.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger. Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams. Miss Joy Birch Meeks. Mr. Tripp Tollison. Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins. It is unanimous, sir.
Thank you so much. I was going to go to the IFP 1-5 Hayes Avenue.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Board members, a few months ago, we came before you requesting that you approve an invitation for proposals for residential construction at 5 Hayes. If you will recall, this was a abandoned property, and we worked with the homeowner to transfer it over to the authority. We demolished the structure on the house, and we solicited bids for new residential construction. We received 2 bids, one from Julia Miller, who is actually a current resident on the island, and Michael Wilson Construction. The review committee reviewed both, and the apparent awardee of the IFP would be Miss Julia Miller. As part of the RFP process, Ms. Miller obtained a survey of the property and submitted her plans to the design review group. The design review group recently approved her plans, subject to the board's approval of the award to her. Ms. Miller also made an offer to purchase the leasehold for $175,000. If the board awards this IFP to Ms. Miller, the authority will transfer the leasehold to her, and she will then have 18 months from September 10th to complete the construction. Staff requests that you award the IFP number 1 to Julia Miller, authorize the transfer of the leasehold estate from the authority to Julia Miller, and authorize staff to grant any extension to Ms. Miller if circumstances warrant.
Okay, I'm going to need a motion to recommend awarding IFP number 1, 5 Hayes Avenue to Julia Miller as recommended by staff. Is there a motion?
Make the motion to be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The next is the request for proposal number 367, historic carriage and beach trail rides. Counselor?
Yes, sir. Before you is a new RFP we are asking you to award. As you know, we have a vendor that currently offers historic trail rides through the historic district and beach trail rides. They are actually quite popular. But over the years, there have been some adjustments we have determined that need to be made. The current location of the paddock or corral area that's functioned for the start and end point for the beach trail rides has become problematic due to the volume of horse traffic and increasing high tides that create wet trail conditions, and it ruins the ground. And the dirt trail leading from the paddock to the Clam Creek Fishing Pier area, and the beach has become severely degraded. Also, increased visitation to Jekyll Island has resulted in increased vehicle traffic on Clam Creek Road, which must be crossed by riders along the current route. For these reasons, it's desirable to relocate the base of operations for the trail ride tours to a site of comparable size that has been identified near the fishing pier, which increases efficiency by taking advantage of existing public facilities available at the pier area, and improves safety and increases visibility and convenience. This is timely as the current lease for the trail rides and historic carriage tours expires in January of actually 2022. And it creates an opportunity for the authority to open up this service to competitive procurement. So we have developed an RFP for your review. We have put in the scope of work in the board memo that shows what we are looking for and what is available. And so staff recommends that the board approve RFP 367 to issue it. And also, it will be posted on the authority website and to the Georgia Procurement Registry.
All those in favor of the motion, the approval of RFP 367, signify by saying.
Do we have a motion?
We need a motion.
Oh, so we need a motion.
Yes, sir.
I apologize. Is there a motion to recommend approval of RFP 367, historic carriage and beach trail rides, as recommended by staff? I need a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Any further discussion? Any discussion? All right, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving the motion to approve RFP 367, historic carriage and beach trail rides, will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Okay. Motion carries
Thank you.
unanimously. Next, I'm going to need Noel, I think, for this one.
Yes, sir.
Noel, we're talking about the RFP 363, permitting, licensing, code enforcement, lease, contract management software.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Marjorie Johnson, our Chief Accounting Officer, led a committee to find a better software to be able to handle permitting, licensing, code enforcement, and lease and contract management consolidated under one program. On Tuesday, 6/15/2021, JIA staff received 7 bids for RFP 363 for that purpose. The 7 proposers were GovPilot, GovSense, Stellar, Tyler, Cobblestone, Sage Networks, and Sierra Digital. The top 4 ranking proposers were given a presentation to the staff and also a software demo for the selection committee. Through the presentation and interview process that took place, Tyler Technologies with their InterGov software emerged as the apparent finalist. The project will streamline permitting, licensing, and code compliance process for both customers and staff. Customers will be able to apply for a permit or license online and attach any documents or attachments that they need to pay for the permit from the comfort of their home or office. Staff will be able to route the permit in a more streamlined review and approval system online from our offices. We'll have the ability to track all permits, licenses, code compliance issues, and lease issues by property address and on a GPS map, teaming up with Glenn County to make that happen. We'll have a capability to create map layers on a GIS map to show the utility lines and conservation areas all on one map. These layers can be turned on and off. The software will allow for tracking of some contract and lease terms, but may not be as robust as we would like. It's an area where this proposer might have been a little weak, but they're working on upgrading those weaknesses as we speak. The software allows for add-on modules such as asset tracking, warehouse inventory, and management and work orders that we could possibly take advantage of in the future. The installation will take approximately 11 months to complete, which begins with the process of taking all of our data in the various locations that we have it, some of it just in Excel spreadsheets, and doing the meticulous migration from those platforms to their total platform. The contract will be a software for services agreement with the annual subscription cost of $31,146. The contract also includes a one-time project setup fee for $53,100, which includes migrating all that data from the various platforms into their platform. Additionally, we'll need $3,000 per year for additional cloud storage and $3,000 per year for Bluebeam software for plans review, which allows us to view plans as they come up and mark them up and then be able to push them on to other members of the design review committee for review. The total fixed year cost is estimated at $90,246,000, which the approved capital funds that were available as approved in the fiscal 22 budget were $100,000. So this is $10,000 under the budget that was approved for this project. Based on the collection committee's findings, staff recommends rewarding RFP 363 to Tyler Technologies Incorporated, pending contract completion and complete legal review.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
Board members, speaking on behalf of staff is very excited about this. From moving from pen and paper and Excel spreadsheets on Maria's computer to software that everyone can access all the information that we need. It's really bringing us current, and we are very excited about it.
So I do need a motion, don't I, Council?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a motion to recommend awarding RFP 363, permitting, licensing, code enforcement, and lease contract management software to Tyler Technologies Incorporated, pending contract completion and legal review as recommended by staff? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion of awarding RFP 363 to Tyler Technologies Incorporated will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay. The motion carries. And then we're going to do a revision to RFP 364.
Yes, sir. Before you, you have a revision to RFP number 364, which is a request for proposal for Jekyll Island Amphitheater. This proposal was issued, you will recall that you approved issuing an open-ended proposal, and it was issued in April of this year, April 21st. Since that time, I've had several conversations with potential proposers expressing various levels of interest in the project. However, since there was no deadline for proposals to be submitted, it seems that the discussions could go on for an extended period. And so looking at this, it seems that it would be appropriate for us to reissue the RFP with a deadline in order to come to some kind of conclusion as far as the probability of being able to move forward with the amphitheater project at this time. There are a couple of things whenever I went back and reviewed the original RFP that I felt like needed to be inserted, and those were redlined in the copy that you received. One would be a submission deadline date of Friday, November the 12th, 2021. And also there's a reference to the Thomas & Hutton Engineering Company of Savannah and the engineering review that they did for us of the facility. That was conducted in January 2012. So there's a transpose error there. It's not January of 2021. It was January of 2012. So that correction needs to be made. And the other item that's important is when we looked at this further, we had in the original RFP the lease and development of the Jekyll Island Amphitheater. And our intent in discussion with various board members is not for the Jekyll Island Authority to operate the amphitheater. And so we have looked at this and added and operation to the proposed RFP. So it would read, the Jekyll Island Authority is seeking developers and/or development teams / interested parties to submit proposals for the lease, development, and operation of the Jekyll Island Amphitheater. The Jekyll Island Authority has a history of partnering with private entities, and this project offers proposers a unique opportunity to develop a true island treasure. And then, as I noted, the Thomas & Hutton structural engineering studies reference, that should be January 2012, and also then a deadline for receipt of proposals of November the 12th, 2021. The interviews would be anticipated during the week of, or the time period of December 1st through the 3rd, with a selection recommendation hopefully at the board's December the 14th board meeting. So it's basically the same RFP, adding the idea of operations and then a deadline for submittal.
Counselor, I'm going to need a motion, all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the revised RFP 364 Jekyll Island Amphitheater as recommended by staff? Need a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
And
Motion
somebody
carries.
sneezed, Mr.
Somebody-
Chairman.
well.
I think that was an affirmative sneeze.
We'll do that. All righty. So the motion carries. Next, I've got the adoption of the fiscal year 22 strategic plan. Jones?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you've received the draft of the proposed FY22 strategic plan. This was developed after you approved the FY22 budget. It basically contains the recommendations of other studies and programs that you have previously approved. The state requires a new strategic plan each year. It's a one-year plan, and it's very specific as far as work items. You have received a copy of this year's proposed plan, and this was, the deadline for submittal was September the 1st. If in fact you were given an opportunity to comment and make any suggested changes, I've not heard from you any changes, but if in fact there are changes, we can make those changes known to OPB. I would also like to note that, well, Noel, are you going to handle the public safety, the ADA funding in your report? Okay, I'll hold that. So, Mr. Chairman, this recommendation from staff is for your approval of the FY 2022 strategic update.
And been moved and seconded.
You'll need a motion.
No, we will need a motion.
Yes, sir.
Need a motion. Thank you. All right, I will need a motion to recommend adoption of the FY22 strategic plan as recommended by staff. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the fiscal year 22 strategic plan as recommended by staff. And any further discussion? Okay, then I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? It's been approved. Motion carries. And then I've got an operations update from Noel.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to give y'all hopefully a brief update on some results from fiscal year 2021. This chart right here is the result of C-Click Fix, the tracking program we use for work orders. And what this represents is the totality of facilities and other departments work as far as people issuing something that needed to be fixed and then getting it fixed. And what this shows you right here is that we had 1,805 work orders put in, and 1,723 were completed in fiscal year 21. And we had some discussions with C-Click Fix, and they said that that volume is the equivalent of about a 5,000 person population city. And they compared us to some cities in Wisconsin and Minneapolis as to how many requests for maintenance we get, and then how many we actually finish within a short period of time. So that's a pretty good measure of how things are working in facilities and other areas. We have work requests put in, they're not being languished or sat on, we're getting them done and we're moving on to the next one. The bottom two are just 56 outstanding, and then 26 were awaiting parts, which is probably typical in this place and time as far as waiting on parts, that's for sure. This next slide represents fiscal 21's fire and EMS responses that occurred. And you'll see it was about 591 combined fire and EMS responses, which is about an average of 50 a day, or 50 a month, which is a pretty good workload for a fire and EMS department that's trying to have a staff of 6 full-time guys there all day long, and part-timers filling in on other days, and they work a 24-hour shift. And we have 2 fire engines and a main ambulance that we run, and a backup engine and a backup ambulance that we run. So that volume is pretty decent for the amount of people we have on Jekyll Island and the amount of calls we get, and it probably reflects what you would see with the gate numbers also. We have visitors here on the island that get in trouble and need help, and we respond to them. And we do a very good job of that. This next slide is pretty phenomenal in this COVID market. In June, the board approved $120,000 to replace vehicles for the Jekyll Island Authority, and mostly go into maintenance and other vehicles. And we immediately launched into a plan to do that. And within 60 days, we had bought 7 vehicles, including newer vans. These are used vehicles. But they are very clean and low mileage. We had located 7 vehicles. We bought them, had them delivered and approved by the state in less than 60 days, and that's a pretty Herculean effort right now. The 2 vans went to our electrician and our plumber, which their vans were old and ready to be replaced, and some of them went to water, wastewater, landscaping, and roads and grounds. So the people that are driving the most miles got the most vehicles. And I will say that Cliff Garr, our director of landscape and planning, had a Ford Ranger, I think since he started working here in 1994, and we finally upgraded him to a full-size truck, and he's very pleased and surprised.
And Noel, when I saw this slide in preparing for today's meeting, I only wish, Mr. Kruger, you were here, I wish we had a before slide that would show what the fleet looked like whenever I first arrived.
I'm surprised they're all the same color.
That's where I was going. We had gray, we had green, we had white, and we had red. I mean, you didn't know who was a card-carrying JIA employee when they came around. So it's just tremendous to see what's happened over time.
As I recall, they would all qualify for antique tag.
You're correct about that. I do know this, Mr. Chairman. We had one particular vehicle that I quote inspected one day, and you could see through the floor of the vehicle. You could see to the ground, and we were still running that vehicle. So we've come a long way.
Yes, sir, we certainly have. And also, we don't have a slide for it, but the $138,000 that was put in the budget for a new garbage truck, we've also acquired that within the past 3 weeks. It's here, logoed up, insured, approved by the state. So we certainly appreciate that, and it's making a big difference in our operations already. Mr. Gross, this is the excavator minus the thumb. Believe me, it had a thumb, and this is not a beach prairie that it's sitting in. It's just a random stock background, just to show you what it looked like. Just for clarification, it's a very nice piece of equipment. We're happy to have it. We're looking forward to taking care of some stormwater issues and other issues that we have in maintaining the landfill properly.
Hey, Buster wants to know what a thumb is. Would you tell him what a thumb?
It makes it where you could pick things up very easily, or crunch stuff up if you need to. That's how we demoed the house on Hayes, was with a thumb on an excavator. This represents the crossover progress that we've made. We've completed the construction of all 10 crossovers on the T streets. That project, part of the project, is 100% complete, and the comments that we've gotten so far have been rave about their construction and what they look like and how nice they are. And I've gotten a couple of calls from some folks on some various streets just lauding the fact that these are finally complete. The two pictures on the right are what we're doing with the funding that was remaining. We're going back and finding some crossovers that were damaged or need repairs, such as Corsair or Thorn. And you can see in that picture of Thorn, we had a storm blow through a month and a half ago, and it ripped the bottom half of it off. So we're gonna have the same contractor that built the ones that are sturdily built now, go back with the extra funding that we have from the state and repair crossovers that need it. And unfortunately, Corsair, and we've discussed that in prior board meetings, it was designed and built to be ADA, but it's not maintainable, and therefore it's going to be ADA to a point, and then it'll be stairs down, so you'll still be able to get out there and look at the ocean, and it'll still have slopes that will promote that. This is just a conglomeration or a collage of a bunch of different pictures, and I'm going to run through some of these, and some of these are not pictured here just due to space. But new bikes in the mid-year budget adjustment you did in January of 21, you allocated $50,000 for new bicycles for bike rental, because bike rentals were off the charts. And those are just a section of the new bikes we got. They finally arrived in June. We ordered them in January, we got bicycles in June. That's another pandemic effect. Everybody's on bikes. But they're pretty cool looking bikes, and we're getting some great comments about them, especially since they're new, but they look old school kind of bike, and folks really like them. The bike paths, if you're driving around or riding around or walking around, you can see that the bike paths are coming alive, and we've finished the south end connection. The last 100 feet is being backfilled today, so that'll be open. The north section that goes from the cottages to Driftwood is complete past the villas, and they're currently trying to backfill that area to make sure it's safe and open. They're halfway done through Captain Wiley, and they have started forming from Days Inn heading south to the Hampton. So those areas will probably be done in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we're pretty excited. That's a few miles of bike paths that'll be brand new and ready for people to traverse upon. And I've gotten a lot of comments about the south end of the island connection, people being pretty excited about being able to loop the entire island and not having to get onto the road. The top right-hand picture is the current reconstruction of the playground, which you put $250,000 in the fiscal budget for this year. We already had gone through and found Game Time, the original contractor, and they had given us a proposal, And once you awarded that money in the fiscal 22 budget on July 1st, we signed the contract and got them going. They got it delivered. They demoed the old playground rapidly, and we had a little shipping lag out of Alabama, but now it's going up in the air, and the little kids section is about 70% complete. The big kids section is about 10% complete, and the slides or the swing sets are about 40% complete. We're hoping to have that up and running by mid-October, 100%. So we're excited about that playground investment. And across the bottom, you'll see Santa's Handiwork, otherwise known as Roads and Grounds and Park Services folks. They're building some more ornaments to hang from trees like we had between the infirmary and San Souci to help fill out some additional areas, which will be a wonderful addition to Holly Jolly Christmas and the loop that you ride around Jekyll Island. I will note that it takes a considerable amount of time for these folks to put this Christmas display together, somewhere upwards of between 3,000 and 4,000 man hours. And it really does take a lot of dedication, and we have a lot of great people and some craftsmen that on rainy days would put together these rebar ornaments to hang. I'd also like to talk about the campground. The campground construction for the expansion, even though we've had some activity out there and it's since stopped, we've had to get the contractor on board with a contract, and we're down to one final red line. And we also have had the tree survey complete, and the tree survey has been put on top of the existing site plan that we have, so we're understanding where trees are in relation to the survey, and we're making some adjustments in some of these campsites. The big issue that I'd like to discuss as far as the campground goes is a definite plus that we've had happen. We got a phone call a few weeks ago from the state ADA office and a follow-up email asking us if we had any projects that we'd like to have the state ADA office look into funding through OPB. And because of the construction cost escalation, the builders that we had selected to do the 4 campground bathrooms were only able to construct 3 out of the 4. So we presented the 4th ADA compliant bathhouse that has 4 ADA showers and then ADA bathrooms on the other side to the state ADA office, and they selected that project to put into the state with OPB to be selected for funding. So just another resourceful way we used to try to get all the funding that we needed to build all 4 bathrooms, and we're still waiting to hear back from the state ADA office, but they were very well pleased with the presentation we put forward, and they think it has a better than average chance of success. Jones, do you have anything you wanted to add with that?
I just think that's powerful, and it's a commendation to Noel in that they reached out to Noel actually to ask if we had any projects because they were putting together their list, and so when we began to talk about it, then we said, yeah, let's submit that and see what happens. Well, then they've now gotten back to Noel and indicated that is a preferred project. So it's kind of neat that we ran into some obstacles because of the pandemic as far as the cost, but yet go in another direction when they still be able to get it funded.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The last thing I wanted to cover briefly is the public safety complex. It's moving forward. There's a geotech study that will take place on 10/1 to do some boring to find some soil values to where that can be sent to the structural engineer. We have a draft architectural design. We met with the designer that the board approved of Jericho Design Group out of Atlanta several months ago. We met with them yesterday. They gave us some final renderings and some final floor plans for us to consider and review, and they're going to take those comments and turn them into 3D images to where we can look at it at a future board meeting, and then take that architectural package and send it to the plumbing, mechanical, electrical engineers to have them start doing their packages also. So by November, we should have a complete architectural package that we can present to the state for hopefully funding through some type of resolution. And then right after that, we'll have the PM&E or plumbing, mechanical, electrical to be able to have a whole set to put out for construction. And it would be nice to have construction ongoing with that project sometime next calendar year, which is hopeful. So I appreciate your time, and I'm available for any questions, but if not, that concludes an operations update.
Great, thank you, Noel.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment just to recognize the outstanding work that has been done in all those areas, but especially the bike paths. The amount of progress that has been made in a short amount of time, and I've enjoyed probably riding the bike paths every day for the last several days, but over the last several weeks, just watching the labor-intensive process and the pace that they've made that, by the time that is all said and done, a lot more safety, a lot more accessibility, and just looking forward to that whole project finishing, but a great job thus far.
Here, here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We appreciate the board's support and the board funding those projects. It definitely is making a great improvement on the island.
Great, thank you so much. Counselor, I don't have any action on this?
No, sir.
None, okay. We can go back and do the Historic Preservation and Conservation Committee. Would you like to do that now?
Did you want to do your executive
We won't finish the
Oh,
because then
I think we will do that. So we'll open the floor for any public comment, 3 minutes. I'm going to skip my report in the interest of time, but why don't you do yours?
Okay. I do have a few things, Mr. Chairman, that do need to come forward today. One is a certificate of occupancy has been issued for buildings 40, 42, and 44 at the moorings. And so that's certainly an accomplishment. You'll recall the board approved and acknowledged a proposed condominium declaration at the same time that you approved the lease, the ground lease for the moorings. Now that buildings are coming on board and are ready for occupancy, the proposed declaration becomes a final declaration. So in keeping with how we've operated in the past, with projects like this, in my capacity as executive director, I'll go ahead and sign that declaration. It will be recorded, and this is no different than what the board has done with other condominium type projects in the past. In addition, I'll execute an amended declaration each time that a new phase or building is completed, and that is in compliance with the Georgia Condominium Act. When the project is completed overall, we'll execute an assignment from the developer to the condominium association at the moorings, as has been done with similar projects in the past. Any comments, Counselor, on that?
This is a little more labor-intensive process and document-intensive process because it's a condominium rather than, just a regular going from developer to HOA. And so that's why it's a little extra paperwork that we're having to go through, but we're excited that it's moving forward.
So it's really exciting that they have now received the certificate of occupancy for 3 of the units. I want to mention a couple of things in addition. As has been mentioned in Lee's presentation earlier, you've not adopted the golf master plan yet. Of course, the reason for that is because we've been doing a deeper dive into various issues and looking at the overall plan. I think it's important for board members to think of the plan in terms of establishing a destination. And in my interpretation, I feel like that our destination is to look at improved and sustainable golf. I think that that's our goal or our destination. And the golf master plan is a way to get there. I think that over the past several months, we've been then exploring with you, just like you do on a map, that there are different routes to get to a destination. And so in your packets today, I've included, again, as we've been doing, I've included some articles that highlight some changes that are taking place overall in the golf world, especially in the United States, and changes that look at par 3 courses. They look at night play by having par 3 courses that are lit. They look at courses with 10 holes, which is unusual. And these are not off-the-wall courses. Some of these courses are of distinction in that they've been utilized for the Ryder Cup, for instance. So these are very serious, significant PGA courses. We've also included an article for you. Golf carts are parked, walking is in, and yes, it's exercise. And so that's kind of an interesting take on what's happening in places around the country. And then also an article that deals with how a major championship course has become a 12-hole model for golf's future. So I do encourage you to read those as we move into the next phase regarding consideration of the Golf Master Plan. Today, the update is that in response to your approval for the archaeological work back in July, that we've been also moving forward with that. Terracon was the successful bidder for that project. And since that time, they have met with our historical resources staff, especially our archaeologists, to talk about what areas were of historical significance earlier, and that should be looked at in their phase 1 survey beyond just what had been looked at earlier. The field work began in mid-August, and the phase 1 survey has now been completed, and that was a survey to identify any unknown cultural resources that would be within the existing project area. No previously unknown sites have been discovered through the process. Now, obviously, that's important to you and to us as we look at the Golf Master Plan. Now, Terragon will begin their phase 2, which will be testing to evaluate the significance of the known previously documented sites, those that our historic resources had previously documented. Terragon expects to finish phase 2 at the beginning of October, and then they will begin to write up their fieldwork reports. So we anticipate then that sometime before the end of the year we would have the final documentation, and which would include the assessments and their findings and any management recommendations. So to me, that's just one more item that you've approved that we've been working on. And so I think it's important for you to realize that these projects, like Noel had shared with you earlier, have been ongoing. I want to also tie back to Lee's presentation this morning. You know that I have been doing a series for you occasionally of what I've entitled Disappointing Destinations, which is something we do not want to become. And I think that it's important, therefore, that we continue to look at the capacity study, and that everything we do be tied back to that. And Dr. Evans, when you mentioned the bike paths earlier, they are smoother. They are certainly completed now, but also they're a capacity issue because now they're 8 feet wide, and so they're safer, and they also then accommodate more folks so that you don't feel as crowded whenever you're riding the bike paths. You will recall those board members who participated in the tour of Summer Waves recently, that the new attraction at Summer Waves that Steve mentioned, Steve Sharp, our manager, mentioned out there to you, that not only is it a new attraction, but it's in a different section of the park, and therefore that would disperse numbers around the park. We're not looking to increase his maximum number of visitors, but instead to make that visitor experience a better experience. And so I think that it's important to everything that we do for us to think about it in terms of what we're recommending to you. In your packets today, not to pick on Venice, I'm sure many of you have been there, and it's a wonderful place, but Venice continues to be, I suppose, the poster child for disappointing destinations now. And partly it's because of the mega cruise ships that have begun going into Venice. And so they're exploring all kinds of different dynamic pricing structures and reservation systems. And one of the other things that they're doing is they're looking at an outright ban during certain times of the year on cruise ships. Douglas had to leave, but in our conversations the other day, his regional manager is out of Key West, and his regional manager was there with us, and his regional manager said, it's interesting that in Key West, we're even looking, there are movements in Key West about cruise ships and how they overwhelm the city. And so not to pick on Venice, but I included this article because I think it's interesting to see how they're trying to deal with some of these issues of more people than the city was originally designed for. And I was at a meeting last week where the state of Georgia population was discussed, the future population. The future population is estimated to increase over the next 20 years. So by 2040, so it's actually less than 20 years now, by another 4 million people in the state of Georgia. Most of those people, if you look at the demographic maps, will be in the metropolitan Atlanta area, the Chatham County or Savannah MSA, and then the Golden Isles. We're not in the same category of those other two, but we're one of the areas in the state designated as a growth area. And so we have to be aware of that, I think, as we look at all of our plans. I included for you, to bring this closer to home about disappointing destinations, we've included for you an article from USA Today about Great Smoky Mountains National Park tests parking fees, reservations at popular waterfall. And this article is about the national park's Laurel Falls and how that they are doing a pilot program now looking at a $14 vehicle charge with timed entry in order to go to Laurel Falls. I'm not advocating that. I'm just sharing with you that these are things that are being done, and it's because the Smoky visitation has increased by about 32% over the past about 11 years or so. And obviously, and you'll enjoy this article because obviously immediately you have a response. And some people, their response is, oh my goodness, this is a money grab. And then other people, their response is, we are loving our park to the point of destruction. The beauty of this area needs managing or risk losing it forever. So this person is very supportive of the pilot project. And they're also looking at options beyond the individual cars. They're looking at shuttle service options. And Lee knows that her group, that's one of the things that we continue to look at, and that's that idea of shuttle service on Jekyll Island for controlling our vehicular traffic. I want to mention a couple of other things, Mr. Chairman, quickly. This year, we had announced in the budget meetings that we anticipated that waste management was going to have a 2% increase for our residential garbage collection, and that would be passed along to our residents. All that JIA does is just collect that through our regular utility billing for waste management. When that actual increase came out, it was 2.9%. And so we had to notified all of our residents who are customers of waste management of this 2.9% increase, which was nothing more than a pass-through. I will say that was it became very reasonable, because when the authority got our bill from Republic, which is another waste management company here locally that actually has our contract for sludge from the wastewater treatment plant, they had announced their fee was going to increase by 5.8% for this year. So I just wanted you to be aware, because we had actually referenced that 2% in the budget meetings. I wanted you to be aware that had changed. Also, you are very complimentary of the staff, Mr. Chairman. You especially are always complimenting the staff, and we appreciate that. And I wanted to include for you today in your blue folders, there is a chart there from the Clifton Strengths Assessment that all of our leadership team went through over the past during the past month or so. We had some sessions earlier back in April, and then we completed it. I suppose that was earlier this month in September. And not to analyze this, of course you can say, look at Hooks versus Noel Jensen. But what's important to me is, if you look at this chart, our staff is so balanced. We have strengths coming from every different direction. And to me, that's a diversity of talents. It's a diversity of people and backgrounds. And I just think that makes the Jekyll Island Authority work. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention today. You also have in your folders a couple of really good letters that were received regarding our tennis center and also our golf course being selected for the 6A, Class 6A State Boys and Girls Golf Tournament next May 16th and 17th. That's a big deal, because that will mean there will be a lot of young people here and looking at golf courses and playing on our golf courses. So that's a big tournament. But anyway, I wanted to share those with you. And so, Mr. Chairman, I took a little longer today, but I felt like some of those items were very important. Thank you.
They are. Thank you. Especially reminding everyone how strongly I feel about this staff and how grateful I am to them. We did not get to the Historic Preservation and Conservation Committee. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Thank you so much. Open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Yes, sir. If you'll come up here.
My name is Al Tate. I'm a resident here on the island. I have a couple of comments. One thing I wanted to say that's already been said, but I'd like to iterate it, because I spent several times up here complaining about the old bike paths. So I would like to acknowledge the improvement in bike paths and the fact that those have been done in extremely timely fashion, and they are of great quality, and me and my family are enjoying them very much. I would like to add a couple of comments to go with that, and that is that now that we have these bike paths, and traffic, I can tell you, is increasing on the bike paths, There is also an increased need for putting some bike racks out at visiting locations so that the bikers can conveniently put their bikes out. I've noticed that they leave them lying around up at Tortuga Jackson, at the convention center areas. So it would be wise to have some additional bike path, racks along the bike paths. Another comment I'd like to make about that is that we could improve some signage for these areas that we would like to disperse our visitors to come to. We have signage that tells you where Summer Waves is, but there is no signage coming off the causeway that tells you where Tidelands Nature Center is. And I'm a big fan of supporting the ecotourism aspect of our island, and I think we need to acknowledge that we can encourage visitors for there. The other comment I wanted to make about that I think is laudable is we finally have gotten work being done on the playgrounds. My daughter and grandchildren were complaining about not being able to go to the playgrounds because they were pretty rough to participate in. But both the playground and the miniature golf are areas that needed that improvement. Another area of that needs improving is the bike path boardwalks that go out across the marsh. Those boardwalks are becoming splintered up, and you can get splinters on your hands from the rails, and the boards on the boardwalk are looking a little ragged. That needs some attention to improve our fingerprint here with our visitors. Another thing I did want to mention is just to give a plug to the Rotary Club. We have a volunteer effort going to restore the benches with the Jekyll Island Authority and the Jekyll Foundation. And those benches are now coming online out there. You can see them and maybe appreciate the fact that we're all trying to help make the island a more enjoyable and better place. So I thought I should mention that. I have one complaint that has come up. The survey results for the master plan and the town hall have been requested by public organizations like the Jekyll Island Citizens Association and 100 Miles, and those are not accessible apparently and have not been released to the public. I would point out to you that people that have a critical eye toward activities, particularly pertaining
Ms. Tate, the time, if I could interject, Mr. Chairman, those will be released today. That was the plan all along, and I think you can rest assured that will happen today.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
The survey results were on the website.
A summary of the survey results have been on the website and were discussed at the previous meeting.
Right.
Thank you. All righty. Did we want to move on to the,
There's another.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please come on up.
Thank you all. I was sitting back there, so you probably didn't see me. Chairman Wilkerson and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to comment today. My name is Susan Inman. I am the Coastal Advocate with 100 Miles, the nonprofit organization. We have many members from Jekyll Island and several full-time staff of people trained in land use planning, policy, and adaptation. We have followed this process and all the authorities' efforts to update plans since our founding 8 years ago. While we appreciate additional areas of undeveloped lands, we, like many of our members and many residents of this island, are keenly concerned about the increasing density on the island and the need for priority actions to maintain the quality of experience here and national character. The document posted for our review reveals this major concern has not been adequately addressed. The document offers no context for how the master plan will be implemented, making clear linkages to the Jekyll Island ordinances and maps that can easily identify appropriate land uses, densities in the developed areas. This is a major hole in the master plan, and it must be addressed. Secondly, from our perspective, the public comment process seems, at best, a series of one-sided surveys, but at worst, a meaningless check-the-box exercise. The public has a right to see the draft of the master plan in order to make comments, not just an outline report prepared through the lens of completed surveys. What value does this master plan process give to the comments received? And how will comments delivered during the public hearing on October 14th be incorporated into the draft? There's no feasible way that the comments delivered through the public hearings on the 14th can be captured or incorporated before sending to the Oversight Committee on the 15th. I was going to further comment about the comments, but now that they're released today, I thank you for that, because we did request that earlier for the state, so I could actually make some comments on that. But we look forward to reading those and making those comments on the 14th. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today.
Anyone else? Okay. So we need to decide if we want to go forward, go back to the historic preservation.
Yes, sir.
Dale, we'll go back to the...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last but not least, I'm pleased to welcome Andrea and Andrew to give us a presentation on the Hollyborn Cottage final plan.
Thank you. I think Jones's earlier comments about the need to manage our resources and plan for increased visitation and growth is an excellent introduction to this conversation about Hollyborn Cottage. When we talk about Hollyborn Cottage, we have often referred to it as the only cottage that is yet to be fully restored. This is really a nice way of saying it needs a lot of work. In fact, in the many years since the state purchased the island in 1947, the cottage has mostly remained closed to the public for safety reasons. Thankfully, that is no longer the case today. While we don't really anticipate it ever being completely restored in the traditional sense, over the last many years, we've made major strides in the preservation and stabilization of Hollyborn Cottage. With thanks to our community partnerships and our volunteers, the cottage has really reached a point where it is able to support regular public visitation. So in planning for increased public use, we plan to install new exhibits at Hollyborn Cottage for the very first time. Last year, we received board approval to hire HW Exhibits to consult with us to plan an exhibit concept design for Hollyborn Cottage. We're very excited to have HW Exhibits here with us today to share a vision for what a new guest experience in Hollyborn could look like. This would be the first major exhibit update to take place in one of our historic district cottages in several decades. So joining us today to tell us about it is Andrew Stever, our project manager, and Erica Fox with HW Exhibits.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you for having us today. I apologize for our delayed arrival. Wreck traffic on 95, shockingly. So we are Andrew Stever and Erica Bilbo Fox. We're also joined in our team by two members of a company called Metters, Inc., which is an architectural firm in Charleston. We are located in Charleston as well. They could not join us today, but Kaylin McNabb and Betty Prime, I just want to acknowledge they were important members of our team. I'm going to try and go quick. This is basically an abbreviated overview of our concept plan for Hollyborn. And we brought printed copies. We have a fully developed plan in case you want to take a look at that as well. Quickly about us, HW Exhibits, we're an exhibit firm as I mentioned, in Charleston. We specialized in exhibit design, content development, and implementation in all kinds of spaces, from museum homes to full-fledged museums, visitor centers, nature centers, educational facilities. We just wrapped up a rather nice project up in Camden, South Carolina, a Revolutionary War museum exhibit. And as I mentioned, we were joined by Metters, an architectural firm in Charleston, and they, as part of their practice, specialize in architectural preservation And of course, with Hollyborn's many preservation needs and ongoing work, they were instrumental in our plan as well. Our journey began right here on Jekyll Island early this year. Our team spent 3 days here where we were treated to a really great behind-the-scenes tour of the historic district and, of course, the Mosaic Museum, as well as sites around Jekyll Island. We got to see every cottage that's visited currently and spend a lot of time in Hollyborn and get a lot of perspectives and input. We had a short workshop with members of the staff and JIA to hear ideas and hear wants and needs and all kinds of different components of what Hollyborn Cottage could be. On the left in this slide is what we kind of developed from that. It's really sort of a way of visually summarizing all of the different aspects of the project, beginning with our key topics, the Maurice family, the home itself, preservation, these stories, and then going out beyond that, thinking about our audience, thinking about what kind of stories we want to tell, what do they look like, what kind of experiences might people have here at a future Hollyborn that's fully realized. We also began crafting a mission statement, and I will just point out an important aspect of that mission statement that we were tasked with was to really think about this experience and what we were envisioning for Hollyborn to be a new paradigm of a sort for potential future exhibit changes or upgrades or changes to other cottages in the historic district. So we kind of wanted to see it through that lens. We also began thinking about our major themes. What kinds of stories, again, would we be telling or would want to learn about at Hollyborn? This includes, of course, the architecture of the home, unique in so many ways. The family that lived there, that loved that house and was there till the very end, till after the war. The social context of their time, the club era, and the fact that this family lived not only by themselves, they had many other families living there with them or other folks living there with them that served them as their staff. What were their stories? The Maurice family championed conservation. Of course, that's something we continue to think about today, of the island and of our natural resources, historic resources. And finally, as I say, the preservation work that's been happening ongoing for several decades now, and the amazing volunteer efforts and amazing efforts of many committed, dedicated folks to preserving Hollyborn and getting us to where we are today and for the future. Our next step was to develop a design scheme, and I'm going to invite Erica to kind of expand on that component.
Thanks, Andrew. So throughout our workshops, we worked with a large team, including the preservation team, as well as the Jekyll Island branding and marketing team. So the design scheme that we ended up with is based off of a visual identity that's already present here on Jekyll Island, as well as the exhibit displays, graphics, fonts that are found in the Mosaic Museum. While we want the Hollyborn Cottage to be unique, our vision is that visitors will see this visit as an extension of a visit to the Mosaic Museum, and are using visual identities such as colors and fonts will help establish that cue. Another aspect that we were hoping to create is that this visual identity will serve as a template for other historic homes or other homes in the historic district. So we want to establish that branding scheme to be applied throughout the island. We also chose colors and fonts based on the existing architectural walls and finishes, as well as the 20th century motif, which is an important time period in the narrative that we're trying to convey throughout the exhibit.
Thank you. So we'll take you on a quick tour. Again, this is going to be sort of an abbreviated. We're going to touch on some highlights, within the home. I will say we really did want to kind of reconsider Hollyborn in a new context. I know most of the cottages here currently tend to be staged in a way that evokes the time that the folks that lived here during the club era, how those houses might have looked. We've kind of taken Hollyborn a step further and began to introduce other kinds of experience and other kinds of interpretive exhibits in the rooms. So again, I will sort of touch on those as we go. Again, beginning here, this is our first floor plan. We'll spend a little time in the first 3 rooms. That's the front parlor, the large room on the left, that's the dining room, and the large room on the right, that's the parlor, where we really did focus a lot of effort in terms of bringing a lot of different components together. And then we'll move towards the back of the house and then quickly upstairs. We strongly feel that really the museum experience here can begin before you even walk in the door. That it really begins when you confront the house, when you look at the exterior. It's an amazing building in and of itself. And so we wanted to start there. Again, I'll have Erica sort of introduce us to Hollyborn in that way.
Yeah, one thing we heard from our workshops is that because this building hasn't been open for public access, we wanted to make it a very welcoming first approach and experience and really invite visitors to come in. And we feel that that experience starts outside of the cottage before you even enter the door. So we propose to add these banners that can just provide some basic information, as well as highlight special exhibits or special events that might take place in the cottage. And again, this we want to be applied to future historic homes is this entry point, so people know that, you know, the visiting hours and other orientation information. So this, we really want to set a precedent. Again, including branding elements so people realize where they are and that this is a part of a greater experience that ties back into the Mosaic Museum and other historic homes. As the visitors enter the building, we want them to be oriented in a way that makes sense. So we do have some orientation banners on either side of that entry door on the left and right. So people can, again, find their footing, find more orientation information. We envision these to have some clear elements in the design, so we're not taking away from the historic building interiors. You'll be able to see those, and they'll blend more seamlessly into the space. And then as the visitor goes further back, we want to stage the existing mantle fireplace area that you see directly in the front doors, and we see this as a gathering space for visitors to begin their tour and sort of look at the orientation panels nearby as they're waiting for the tour to begin.
And just to note, we are providing in our slides, obviously, some floor plan images, existing photographs where we've highlighted some of the ideas that we're expressing, as well as inspirational photos. So it's kind of how we've arranged these. And one more point I will say, as one enters the home and as a museum experience in general, one of our considerations was to think about Hollyborn in the context of a self-guided tour. I know most of the cottages are guided tours, but we want to think about this in terms of people visiting and being able to circulate themselves. So moving into the next room, the dining room, again, we envision a wide variety of experiences here, including a centerpiece being a dining room table that is part of the original furniture collection of the family. We also see opportunities to include stories about preservation on the far wall, where we can see the tabby structure itself from the inside and explore how this house was built uniquely. And a virtual tour of sort, a kind of virtual home that allows people to explore the house from the first floor and see all aspects of it virtually. That's in the form of a touchscreen. Across the hall in the parlor, again, we continue that experience with additional features like a desk that belonged to the family, a another virtual type experience that would allow people to digitally explore family stories, a large photo scrim showing how the house looked, how that room looked for both this room and the dining room in its original form, as well as some freestanding kind of traditional graphic panel type structures that allow people to see images, read text, get context. And those structures are something that we imagine would be used elsewhere in the home. And then quickly, on the first floor, we have the butler's pantry and the kitchen. Again, this is where the story shifts to the perspective of the staff, the people that worked in the home, and providing experiences and interpretation revolving around those stories. Moving to the second floor, again, we planned exhibits for not every single bedroom, but we used several bedrooms or imagined several bedrooms being utilized for exhibits on the first floor, on the second floor, with a variety of different types of exhibits, including staging. One of the rooms perhaps to be, as Mrs. Maurice may have had it furnished, including potentially another family artifact. We also imagine at least one bedroom being preserved or being left completely empty and as is, as found, so that people can see what it looked like in their day, not restored, unchanged from when they were here. Across the hall, we imagine potentially having a preservation room that speaks to the ongoing preservation efforts, allows perhaps even demonstration, discussion of materials, that sort of thing involved, as well as the people who are involved in it. And a bridge building room. We know Mr. Maurice was a bridge builder, and really exploring how his engineering and bridge technologies were introduced into the architecture of the home. Finally, in the attic, we imagine the attic might be a different kind of experience because it's unique and less accessible than some of the other parts of the house. It also contains some of the most sensitive and unique cultural, or I should say historical, features in the home. I'll let Erica, again, sort of speak to that briefly.
Sure. Again, in our workshops, we determined one of the most interesting parts about Hollyborn Cottage that makes it unique are these physical artifacts in the home, this graffiti and children's drawings. So we wanted to have a special multimedia experience highlighting these drawings that provide visitors with a personal connection to these stories. This experience works in tandem with another AV experience located on the first floor that Andrew already spoke to. And part of that is because the attic is difficult to access, so people with accessibility issues would not likely be able to go to the attic to see these. So we really were thinking throughout this whole plan about trying to be as ADA compliant as possible and as accessible as possible to create this attic experience on the first floor and to bring all the experiences that you'll have on the second floor and the attic to the first floor, so everyone is able to experience the house. We are thinking the attic experience, because it is special, might be a paid experience, so that's one option to consider. Yep. And then we also have some additional interpretation on the attic of the structure of the building and other interpretations of the family's experience in the attic.
Finally, our plan also does include some extensive preservation recommendations based on the current state of the house. Again, this was done with our partners from Metters, who provided a number of types of preservation priorities based on current needs as well as future safety and accessibility for visitors. We included also our kind of visitor takeaways. What do we want people to come away with when they have been to Hollyborn and shared in these experiences? It's an important aspect from an exhibit designer standpoint to think about why people want to see something and what they come away with when they leave. We included a proposal for phasing the project, breaking this down into
2 major phases, and those could even be further broken down into to subphases to accomplish these in a ongoing fashion. Even imagining the home being open potentially to visitors before completion of everything, and so at least you can begin to introduce visitors to the home. Finally, we included a project schedule based around the phasing, roughly a 2-year plan, 1 year per phase, and those are also kind of based around the floor plan. So that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Also, if we have any public comment on the presentation on this section. Okay. Dale, I believe we're going to
Yeah,
alter the
thank
schedules.
you for bringing us that information. And Mr. Chairman, due to the late hour, items B and C will be taken up in the October meeting.
Great, thank you so much. I need to get the board meeting agenda done, don't I, Counselor?
Were there any public comments? You asked for public comments for the particular presentation, but were there any public
No.
comments for the entire committee? Okay.
To my knowledge, thank you. Go on. I want to open the September 21, 2021 board meeting, the Jekyll Island Authority. I'm a stickler, so call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger. Mr. Bill Gross.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Here.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks.
Here.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Here.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Good. Let's move to the minutes of the August 17, 2021 board meeting. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the August 17, 2021 board meeting. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay, motion carries. We now have to go to the postage meter lease. Board members have received a Finance Committee recommendation to approve the proposed postage meter lease. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second is needed. Okay. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. And then the request for approval of operating equipment leases. Make sure I've got this right. Golf course maintenance equipment lease.
Yes, sir.
All right. Landscape equipment lease.
Yes, sir.
Roads and grounds equipment. All right. Here we need a motion. Board members have received a Finance Committee recommendation to approve the proposed equipment leases, including the golf course maintenance equipment lease, the landscape equipment lease, and the roads and grounds equipment lease. Any further discussion? Okay, we just need a call for a vote. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Carries. The other we have is the authorized proposed master plan update to be sent to Georgia state officials. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to authorize the executive director to send the proposed master plan update to Georgia state officials. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second is needed. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, then we've got the consideration of award for IFP number 1, 5 Hayes Avenue. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to award IFP number 1, 5 Hayes Avenue to JIA Miller. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? Okay, none. There's no motion or second needed. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Then we've got the request for proposal, RFP number 367 for historic carriage and beach trail rides. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to issue RFP 367 for historic carriage and beach trail rides. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? Chair hears none. No motion or second is needed. Any further discussion? All those in favor will signify by, is there?
No, sir.
Okay. The call for the vote, all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, this is the consideration of award for request for proposal, RFP 363, permitting, licensing, code enforcement, and lease contract management software. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to award RFP number 363 to Tyler Technologies Incorporated, pending contract completion and legal review. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second is needed. Any further discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, next is the request for revision to RFP 364 for Jekyll Island Amphitheater. The board members have received committee of the whole recommendation to issue the revised RFP 364 for the Jekyll Island Amphitheater. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? Chair hears none. There's no motion or second needed. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed, like sign. The motion carries. The request for adoption of FY22 strategic plan. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to adopt the FY22 strategic plan. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second is needed. Any other discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. The motion carries. And we will open the floor for any public comment with the 3-minute restriction, please. Okay. And we come to that wonderful part. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Is there a second?
Amen.
Is there a second? I need to have a second on the record.
I think the amen counts.
Okay, good. Counselor, thank you. Let's see, any discussion, everything else? All those in favor of adjourning this meeting will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The time is now 12:02 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very, very much.
And no.
Thank you.
Okay.